We're in chapter 6, part 2. We pick it up with differential association theory. This is Edward Sutherland's theory. Edwin's theory dates back to 1939, but it actually is really interesting because it takes several aspects of why somebody might commit crime and puts it together. Basically, what Sutherland is saying is, if you break society's laws, chances are there's somebody that influenced you. And the intensity, the length of that association, making your approach favorable to doing a criminal activity, will be determinant. So, again, if you've got a brother that's into, let's say, doing drugs, then you're probably going to view that activity as positive because your brother did that. Again, the more you associate, the more intense that association, the more likely you'll adopt those same attitudes and behaviors. The second theory is called rational choice theory. And it's important because all of criminal justice, all policing, and all of the courts are founded on this assumption that we as human beings make rational choices to commit crime. Now, the problem with that is that we know that there are certain crimes, like violent crimes, things like that, that seem to defy the idea that somebody made a logical decision to do them. But the idea is, well, if I could find the right sentence or punishment, I could encourage people not to do this crime and thus reduce crime, not have the death penalty for every kind of offense like they had back in the Middle Ages and before, but something in which the punishment fits the crime, and then this will reduce crime. And the problem with that is that it doesn't seem to really work, even though its assumptions seem to make sense back in the day when the death penalty was the only kind of punishment for crime. We go on to social bond theory. This is Reckless and Travis Hershey. Reckless basically said that you have inner and outer containments, ideas of, good behavior or correct behavior from your parents that keep you innerly contained, and then there's outer containments where people are watching you to stop you from doing bad activities. Hershey developed that more into what he called social bond theory. The stronger your social bonds to basically play ball with society, the less likely you'll commit deviance and crime. Then we get into labeling theory, which is kind of coming from the Cooley and Mead theorems about how if you're labeled something that you're going to be more likely to do it. But it goes one step further with Howard Becker, and he talks about moral entrepreneurs, people that strive to have something declared illegal or deviant. Back several years ago, the pornographic magazines were available at 7-Eleven, and then eventually they were moved. First they were taken off, and then they were moved behind the counter. And this was the idea that the magazines were going to cause people to be rapists or cause sexual assaults. No evidence for that, but moral entrepreneurs campaigned and had the 7-Eleven company change its viewpoints and move the magazines. He also talks about primary, secondary, and tertiary deviance. I'll leave you to read that. Now, most of the time, we don't spend a lot of time with a postmodern perspective. In this case, Michel Foucault's Discipline and Punishment brings us to some interesting ideas about the surveillance society in which are we and can we be provoked to being rule followers if we're being surveilled all the time. And he brings up the panopticon, and there's a picture of that. This is where guards in the tower, in a central tower surrounded by sort of like kind of like a bagel design, could see into every cell. And the idea was that they could then control and view all the prisoners' activities in this panopticon design. Now, we move to crime classification. The UCR, the Uniform Crime Report, put a little star by that. You are going to have to know that for the test. And it's compiled by the FBI. FBI asks all police departments to report their crimes. And when we're talking about the crime rate, almost every time we're talking about the Uniform Crime Report. Now, that's an interesting element all on its own because it doesn't include all crimes. In fact, it doesn't even include most crimes. It includes, and there's this pie chart here, the UCR includes larceny, theft, aggravated assault, burglary, vehicle theft, robbery, rape, murder, and arson. 8 crimes. You'll have to know them for the test. Those 8 crimes. Why is that important? Well, because again, that's not even 25% of all crime committed. Most crimes are drug abuse, driving under the influence, other kinds of offenses. But these crimes are put together and thought of as, I guess, the most important. Now, Marxists point out that a lot of them are property crimes. In fact, somebody might have said, hey, listen, didn't you say like thieving people like 3 different times? And yes, I did. So one of the key things to remember about the 8 crimes is the difference between larceny, motor vehicle theft, robbery, and burglary. So this is how I remember it. I thieve a thing from somebody. Right? I just walk up and take your purse. That's thieving something. If I pull a gun out and say, give me your wallet, that's robbery. And if I take something from a structure, a house, that's burglary. And of course, motor vehicle theft is stealing a car. Now, we move on to violent crimes and property crimes. Those are fairly explanatory, but public order crimes. Now, this is interesting, sometimes referred to as victimless crimes. This is drugs, gambling, pornography, prostitution, well, illegal pornography. Now, we've had to rethink the idea of victimless crimes, but we've also had to rethink the idea about the war on drugs because has the legalization of certain drugs caused some huge uptick in crime, and we haven't seen it. So what about public order crimes? Because again, clearly part of this is social order defined by moral entrepreneurs that want certain things declared illegal. And again, we think, oh, well, but, certain things, well, gambling's illegal everywhere. Not true. It's legal in New Jersey. It's legalized in Nevada. Well, but prostitution is illegal everywhere. Not true. Prostitution's legal in 4 counties in Nevada. Well, but drugs are, oh, no, wait a minute. Depends on the drug, depends on the place. So clearly, public order crimes differ. We talk about white-collar crimes and corporate crimes. Now, this is where a lot of people tend to kind of like snooze out, white-collar crimes. This is rich people stealing rich people stuff. And I get it, why that's maybe not as exciting as other kinds of crime. However, what I do want you to remember, though, is that white-collar crime and corporate crime, they make the least amount of sense from a social standpoint. These are rich people that are already wealthy stealing even more. And the theories need to be able to explain that kind of crime. Going back to differential association theory, that helps explain white-collar crime. A guy comes in, he's, young, let's say, day trader. Now he's trading at Prudential, and somebody teaches him how to skim and scam his customer. He didn't know how to do that before, but based on his association with somebody who teaches him, then he does know how to commit this crime. Also, the idea by Quinney that basically the whole thing, the whole capitalist system, provokes people at that level, that position in society, to take and be criminals because they know that they're never going to be punished like somebody that commits a street crime. Internet crime, this is a big one on the rise. Everything from scams to ransomware, as well as crimes committed on the internet like child pornography and things like that. Then there's organized crime. Now, if you leave this course knowing just about only one thing, one of the things that I would want you to know is that you've been taught to think that organized crime is something that came to us through Italian immigration and the Italians and Sicilians. And that's just not true. My people, the Irish were the first to come up with organized crime. In New York, Boston, they had gangs that ran the city. In fact, Scorsese's movie, The Gangs of New York, actually a fairly good accounting of how Irish gangs battled what was called nativists or English-born gangs in the United States for control of the big cities and control of things like prostitution and booze and gambling and loan sharking and all other kinds of illegal crime. Great movie if you want to see it, but got to be careful because while that's a good one, all the other movies about Italian mafiosos have led most of Americans to forget about the Irish period and actually Jewish period of gangsters and organized crime and concentrate almost exclusively on Italians. We move on to political crime and Edward Snowden is mentioned here. And again, here we have to decide from our perspective as criminologists, is he really a criminal? Is he a patriot? What did he do to get the ire of the American government other than rat the American government out that it was doing illegal things in our name? Lots to think about there. And we'll pause here and pick it up with part 3 of chapter 6, long chapter, next.